Hey friends, today I want to share with you one of the most remarkable true stories of God's faithfulness and answered prayer, a story that comes from the life of missionaries in Mexico in the year 1872. This account is not fiction. It is not a parable or an allegory. It is history, preserved so that generations after might see the hand of God at work and be encouraged to trust Him in their own trials. It is the story of a missionary family, husband, wife, and their little child, who faced a deadly threat in a foreign land. And yet, by the simple act of prayer, they were miraculously preserved from danger that could have ended their lives. But this story is not just about them. It is about us too. For their God is our God. Their prayers are like ours, and the same power that shielded them on a dusty Mexican road can shield us in our homes, our travels, our workplaces, and our spiritual battles. So, let's journey together into this powerful testimony, draw lessons from it, and see how faith and prayer can transform fear into victory. It was the spring of 1872. The setting, the city of Cadereyta, Mexico. The air was thick with uncertainty, for the country was in a state of revolution. To be a foreigner, especially an American missionary, in such a land was dangerous. But for this family, Mexico was not just a foreign land, it was their mission field. They had labored faithfully, planting seeds of the gospel, nurturing souls, and enduring the difficulties of missionary life. Yet, they sensed the Lord leading them to return to the United States for a season. They had prayed earnestly about it, asking God to make the way clear. At last, the means were provided, and the opportunity appeared. But though the way seemed open, the path ahead was filled with peril. Because of the revolution, no stagecoaches were running. The usual means of safe travel were gone. Instead, the only option was to take conveyance in Mexican carts. So they engaged 2 men, each with carts, one cart for the family, fitted with a mattress to serve as a bed at night, the other for baggage and provisions for both people and horses, as the journey would be long and mostly through uncultivated, wild country. But the greatest danger was not hunger or fatigue. It was a man. His name was General Cortinas. General Juan Cortinas was no ordinary soldier. He was infamous. His name brought fear to the hearts of both Mexicans and Americans alike. He was a man with blood on his hands, no less than 17. Indictments for murder awaited him in the state of Texas. He was known for his hatred of Americans. Even the Mexicans dreaded him, for his cruelty spared no one. And now, this missionary family knew that Cortinas and his troops were somewhere between them and Texas, the very path they had to travel. Friends and brethren in Cadereyta tried desperately to dissuade them. "Don't go," they said. "If you fall into the hands of Cortinas, at best you will lose everything. At worst, you may lose your lives." But the family's hearts were fixed. God had provided the means. God had opened the door. And so, they resolved to trust Him also for protection. On the 19th of March, they set out for Matamoros, a distance of about 300 miles. Their small party included the family of 3, the 2 Mexican drivers, and their wives, 7 in all. And as they left, the brethren in Cadereyta promised to pray daily for their safety. Imagine the scene: 7 travelers, fragile carts, a rough and uncertain road, an infant child, and ahead of them the possibility of meeting a ruthless general. But each morning, before starting, they committed themselves into the care of their covenant-keeping God. They knew they could not keep themselves, but they knew he could. On the third morning, after prayer, they resumed their journey. Hours passed. Dust rose behind the carts. The wilderness road stretched endlessly before them. Then, suddenly, someone noticed movement in the distance. A line, a formation. Soldiers. It was the troops of General Cortinas. About 2 miles away, they were marching directly toward them. Fear must have gripped their hearts. They were not soldiers. They were not armed. They were vulnerable, an easy prey. But instead of panic, they turned their eyes heavenward once again. Together, they prayed, "Lord, as you shut the mouths of lions that they should not hurt Daniel, restrain now the passions of men, that they may not hurt us." And with that prayer, they continued forward. As they drew nearer, the advance guard halted them. "Wait here," they commanded, "until the general comes." Minutes felt like hours. Their hearts pounded. Their child whimpered. The desert sun bore down on them as they waited. At last, General Cortinas himself rode up, surrounded by his escort. The moment of truth had come. He greeted them. Then, in Spanish, he asked, "From whence have you come? And where are you going?" They answered truthfully. He asked again, "What news from Nueva Leon?" The state they had left. They replied as faithfully as they could. Then came their question, "Is the road safe between us and Matamoros?" To their astonishment, Cortinas replied, "Perfectly safe. You can go on without any fear, as safely as you would in your own country." And with that, he bid them good morning and rode away. He did not search their baggage. He did not question them further. He did not harm them. The bloodthirsty general, with 17 murders to his name, simply let them go. When at last the missionary family reached Brownsville, Texas, they shared their story, and everyone who heard it was amazed. "How is it possible?" They said. "General Cortinas, kind, respectful, not even searching your things? Impossible. We could never have believed such a man capable of such restraint." And indeed, it was not natural. It was supernatural. It was the restraining hand of God in answer to prayer. By nature, Cortinas was violent. By record, he was a murderer. By reputation, he hated Americans. Yet in that moment, he became, if only for a few minutes, a gentleman, a protector rather than a predator. And the missionaries knew it was God. This story shines a light on a truth we often overlook. Not only does God deliver by removing dangers, He also delivers by restraining them. When the lions were not removed from Daniel's den, God restrained their mouths. When Pharaoh pursued Israel, God restrained him until his people had passed safely through the sea. When Satan sought to destroy Job, God restrained him with limits, thus far and no farther. God's power is not always seen in storms vanishing, enemies fleeing, or battles never happening. Sometimes, His power is seen in dangers still present, but powerless. That is what happened on the road in Mexico. Cortinas did not vanish. His soldiers did not retreat. The family still had to face him. But God restrained his hand, and their lives were spared. It is important to notice something. Prayer was at the very heart of this miracle. The family themselves prayed daily, committing the journey to God. In the moment of crisis, when soldiers appeared, they prayed again. And behind them, in Cadereyta, believers prayed constantly for their safety. Prayer was not an afterthought, it was their lifeline. Too often, we treat prayer as our last resort. But for these missionaries, prayer was their first instinct, their daily habit, their continual shield. And God heard. The lesson is simple. Prayer restrains evil, not because of any magic in the words, but because prayer connects us to the Almighty, who alone can bend the hearts of men and redirect the course of events. Now pause and imagine what courage it must have taken to continue forward when they first saw the troops. They could have turned back. They could have hidden. They could have panicked. But they chose to move forward in faith. And that, too, is a lesson for us. Faith does not mean the absence of fear. Faith means moving forward despite fear, trusting that God goes before us. Courage is not the denial of danger. It is dependence on God in the face of danger. Consider also the testimony their deliverance left behind. The believers who had prayed in Cadereyta rejoiced when they heard the news. The people in Brownsville marveled at the miracle. Generations later, we are still inspired by this testimony. This is the ripple effect of answered prayer. It glorifies God, strengthens faith, and encourages countless others who hear the story. Your answered prayer today may be the encouragement someone else desperately needs tomorrow. It is not only in history that such miracles occur. Even today, countless testimonies speak of God's restraining hand. A Christian man once delayed his travel because he felt urged to pray longer before leaving. Minutes later, he discovered that an accident had occurred at the very spot where he would have been had he left earlier. A woman working under a hostile manager prayed daily for God's protection. That same manager, who had ruined others, showed her unexpected favor and even promoted her. Missionaries in dangerous regions have testified of attackers fleeing suddenly, later admitting they saw men in white guarding the compound, angelic protection in response to prayer. These are not fairy tales. They are echoes of the same God who restrained Cortinas. At its core, this story teaches us that prayer changes outcomes. Prayer restrained lions, prayer restrained Pharaoh. Prayer restrained Cortinas. And prayer can restrain the dangers we face today. It reminds us that the world is not ruled by chance, nor by evil men, nor by hostile circumstances. The world is ruled by God, and He listens to the prayers of His children. As we close, picture again that dusty Mexican road in March 1872. A missionary family, vulnerable and afraid, face to face with a notorious general. Soldiers all around. No escape. By every human measure, this should have been their end. But because they prayed, and because others prayed for them, it became a beginning, a testimony of God's faithfulness that continues to inspire believers. More than a century later, this is the God we serve. The God who hears prayer. The God who restrains evil. The God who makes even enemies into instruments of His protection. Key lessons to take away: prayer restrains evil. It is not powerless whispering into the air. It is the most powerful weapon we have, because it calls on the Lord of heaven and earth. God goes with us. Like the missionary family, we do not walk alone. He is with us in every journey, in every trial, and in every uncertain step. Faith requires courage. They still had to face Cortinas. Likewise, we still must face trials. But faith gives us courage to move forward, knowing God goes before us. Answered prayer strengthens others. Their deliverance glorified God in Cadereyta, in Brownsville, and now across the world. Your answered prayers can encourage others too. The same God is still at work. The God of Daniel, of the Israelites, of the missionary in Mexico, is your God today. His power has not changed. His ear is still open to your cry. Scripture anchors. The angel of the Lord encamps round about them that fear Him, and delivers them. Psalm 34 verse 7. When a man's ways please the Lord, He makes even his enemies to be at peace with him. Proverbs 16 verse 7. Call upon me in the day of trouble. I will deliver you, and you shall glorify me. Psalm 50 verse 15. These verses are not ancient poetry. They are living promises, as true in your life as they were in theirs. So, dear friend, what Cortinas are you facing today? Is it a financial crisis? A hostile environment at work? A looming health challenge? A conflict in your family? A fear of the future? Whatever it may be, the answer is the same. Pray. Call upon God. Trust His power. He may not always remove the danger, but He will always restrain it, sustain you, and glorify His name through your life. The missionary story is not meant to sit in a book. It is meant to live in you. So go forward, pray boldly, walk courageously, and expect God to move powerfully. And when He answers, share the testimony, so others may be strengthened. Because prayer still works. God still answers. And He is still the same yesterday, today, and forever.